Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher, and now's a good time to revisit that classic era of where are we going? Where is our journey taking us? And we're getting hyped, right? We're riding a hype wave now that's going to last probably for a few months until we get our hands on the beta and we get into our nitty gritty and we start finding out all the little details and stuff. But now we can start to see the most important thing, which is the direction the game's taking us. This is almost as important as anything else. It doesn't matter what the features and the little twists and the little turns and the little additions we're getting. It's where are we going? What are we going to be doing in this game? So about this time last year, or probably a bit earlier actually, when the alpha of Warlords of Draenor came out, I made a little video called The Problem in the Mist, because every single scrap of info we were getting was contradictory, it was hypocritical, it didn't make sense. Everything looked really grim from an actual gamer standpoint, from an old school WoW fan standpoint. Everything about Mists of Pandaria was shaping up to be fucking awful. Really bad, and that's why I had to go on a bit of a rant. It was bothering me. This is a game I loved, and I had to get on there and say, you know what, this is just wrong, man. This isn't working. What we found is Mists of Pandaria actually turned out to be, in my opinion, one of the best expansions WoW has ever had. But I would also consider Mists of Pandaria to be a test bed for some ideas, such as, do we need to build an expansion around a major lore character? Do we need to have this guy on the front of the box? Do we need a Deathwing? Do we need an Arthas? Do we need an Illidan in order to push it and make it work? Or can we actually get away with just having really good in-game mechanics, plenty of stuff to be doing, loads to be getting on with? So we got scenarios, we got plenty of really good, and I'm going to say it, we had some really good daily stuff. Really good. The Isle of Thunder stands out way ahead of me in terms of what a really good daily area is like. Lots of variation, loads to do, really quick and simple for those of the guys who didn't like daily stuff. All these new mechanics were thrown in there. We had original bosses, plenty of original bosses with great scope, wonderfully designed raid instances, all sorts of this stuff to be carrying on with. It was really good. It had a rocky start though. Can't deny that. A really rocky start. Blizzard just couldn't get the message over that you didn't actually need to do the dailies. But because of such things as 5-mans being far too easy, everything else just being a little bit flat, as soon as the game actually reached level 90, as soon as the players reached level 90, what they were left with was these optional but kind of non-optional daily quests, because there wasn't much else to do. People were already starting alts just a couple of weeks after the expansion came out, because frankly there just wasn't awful interesting things to do. There wasn't that meat and two veg there. Like we saw in Wrath of the Lich King, like we saw in TBC, and like we even saw in Kata, is as soon as you capped, there was a world of stuff to be getting on with because we had a journey to go along. So now Warlords of Draenor is coming. Is it another problem in the Mist? No! I have not been this hyped about an expansion for ages. I'm talking at least TBC Wrath of the Lich King era have I been this hyped. And even me, who gets cynical sometimes when some decisions are made, and I look at them and I say, oh, I just don't buy that. Why did you nerf the ads on Horadon again? This point in the expansion, Blizz? When those things are announced, I just look and I scratch my head. I'm like, I don't really get it. We're not even doing that LFR anymore. What's going on there? But what we're seeing now with Warlords of Draenor is a very harsh line, actually. And I don't think people are really appreciating how harsh some of the decisions are so far with Warlords of Draenor. It seems like they've pussyfooted around in the past. This idea of we're going to get rid of spells, we need to condense it down, you know, the talent system's a little bit bloated, we're gonna do this. That's the kind of thing we've been hearing for several expansions now. The same with the healing thing. Yeah, we want healers to care about mana, and we want this and this, and they kind of softly edge people in, probably for a fear of players overreacting and going, ah, no, don't like it, don't like it. Which, as you know on the internet, no matter what they change, they're going to get some sort of ridiculous outcry. Don't seem to have gone this way this time. And that gives me great hope for a wonderful, wonderful piece of content that's going to last us much time, okay? Much time, much investment. I want the game to make me want to close the blinds and shut off the world for at least a month, right? I want to forget that the outside world exists for a month or so. And we're still edging in there. This is only alpha. We're starting to pull information out. It is graphically sort of on a Wrath of the Lich King level, where we've got this kind of old school brutish look. I don't really care about that stuff. What I do care about is how heavy-handed some of these decisions have been. Because that strikes me as Blizzard turning around and saying, you know what? I'm fucking done with trying to ease people into the changes. Because we've been trying to do that for the last 5 years. We've been trying to ease people into changes, give them gradual adaptation into what we're deciding to do. And you know what? We're just not seeing the results. We're not seeing the results we want quick enough, and now we're like 5 years down the line and we haven't really progressed. So with the talent stuff, we're seeing a lot of core spells just chopped. Now they're saying, you know what? We do want to cut out the buttons. There's too many fucking buttons. How are we going to solve this? And their simple answer is this. We're just going to get rid of a load of fucking stuff. We're not going to ease you in. We're not going to swap things around. We're not going to give things multiple things to do. We're just getting rid of them. We're just fucking them off. Forget it. If it's not worthwhile, cut it. If it's an ability that does a bonus, get rid of it. And they're actually being really level-headed and common sense about this, especially with the debuffs. This is what gives me great hope as well, is the debuffs and buff system. So it's the similar idea of Sunder Armor. You would tell a player back here a couple of years ago we're getting rid of Sunder Armor, people would lose their fucking minds. But the way the game has progressed, they've been baking abilities on top of abilities. So now we have sub-abilities which do like 3 things. They're now saying, why? Why are we doing this? Fuck it off. Get rid of it. Just get rid of it. It's pointless. They're doing it by default, and therefore it's not fun, it's not interesting, it's just happening. No one cares about it. No one gives a shit. It kind of takes me back to the original guides that I did, trying to get people to understand that you should read your fucking tooltips, because it's important for your class to know what your spells are doing. But we got to a point in WoW where there were so many things being done passively that nobody cared. No one gives a shit. If you ask an average 10-man guild if they got their weakened debuffs on, they're like, I don't know. What, are you pressing this button that you would press anyway? Yeah. Then you've got it. So therefore it's pointless because people are doing it without thinking. Let's chop it out. Let's get rid of it. It's just a waste of stuff that's going on in the game. We don't need it. All we have to do is make things so they don't hit as hard in that example, or they take slightly more damage. We could do that at our end, and they don't need to have all this extra tooltip nonsense going on. They don't need to have all these tooltips that are enormous in nature. We've seen some outrageous tooltips over Mists of Pandaria, specifically the Druids with some of the ideas they came up with there. You look at the idea of symbiosis where there's literally sheets of information about what your symbiosis does. That's not fun for a player. He wants to see what he can do within the game. What he's not going to do is try and travel around and visit every spec and transfer and respec and then check every single symbiosis out, because it's just boring. No player wants to do that in the entire world. So, you know what? Yeah, it was a kind of cool idea, I guess, but it's just too much fucking fluff that comes with it. There's too much cheddar on top of my fucking chili. I just want the red hot chili. What I don't want is all this stuff and asparagus and all this nonsense. I just want the fucking beef, baby. So let's chop all that crap out of it and get back to bare bones. So I would like to say that Warlords of Draenor so far is the land of opportunity. I mentioned this on the web show, is I consider this expansion, based on its alpha notes so far, that it's the land of opportunity. What we can say is that every time I release one of these videos, I'm going to have to put a disclaimer now before we do more Warlords of Draenor stuff, is as at the time of recording, we're getting so much information that this information can change while I'm recording it. So that's something we need to bear in mind. So I'm basing this as of recording right now, is we look at these alpha notes and we say, they're really getting back to basics. They're chopping down our trees. We don't need 8 million keybinds anymore. We don't have to have spells that do 9 different things, because those 9 different things are being covered by passives anyway. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. No good. Just fuck it off and forget all about it. So what are we going to get in return? Back to basics is a wonderful thing. A really wonderful thing, because back to when your foundation is basic. And what is the ultimate foundation of any MMO? It's the classes. The classes and what those classes can do, that's your foundation. You can build a game based on what the classes are capable of. If we can assume certain raid sizes and then assume certain class compositions, and then we also balance everybody, which is something they've been dying to do for so long and have failed to do since the Burning Crusade, is actually to bring the player, not the class. But what we can assume is there'll be a certain raid makeup because of that. Because we're going to have balanced rosters. No guild is going to try and stick 9 DKs into a mythic raid. What they're going to do is at least have a couple of DKs, couple of priests, couple of druids, because all those classes are balanced, hopefully. When we reduce all the talents and the spells and abilities down to a very basic level, we can balance much, much easier, which then enables us to say, right, our raid compositions in mythic are going to look something like this. And if they're not, that's actually the guild's fault, and they will realize it straight away because they have too much of X class. What they will be doing is saying, right, we know this is what this raid's capable of. They have X amount of dispels. They have X amounts of mobility. They have these spells. They have these talents. They have access to all these things. Therefore, we can now build stronger raid bosses that are really primed. We can start looking again at proper enraged timers. We're not worried about things like tons of skull banner cheesing, tons of other kinds of just reworks and remodels by guilds in order to try and get bosses to work. What we don't want is a repeat of Nefarian where certain abilities just fly off the handle. We don't want to see that ever again. So by bringing us right down to our core roots, really coming down to our core roots, we're starting to see this flesh out into, look, this is what a raid is capable of. Now we can build something really good around that. We can base our gameplay on it. We can see where it's going to go. Worries. Gotta have worries, because I keep saying this is the land of opportunity. Will Blizzard seize these opportunities? I've already seen things like Berserker stance disappear. As I said on the web show, kind of think that's a missed opportunity there. There was an opportunity there for fun. So for real fun engagement and a decision to be made by Warriors to use Berserker stance when it's usually not recommended. Because Berserker stance just giving crit or whatever, that's boring. We're going Berserk as a Warrior. Really like to see something done with that. Will they take this opportunity? Will they leap all over the idea of professions and just make them a ton of fun? Will they make them a ton of fun? We don't know yet, because we're still in the idea of the very basic patch notes, just fleshing out what the basics are going to be. Right? So this is something we really need to consider, is are they going to take these opportunities? Are they going to look at what they've changed and taken away and then not screw it up by adding a lot more? Which brings me to my big worry, is the addition of the brand new secondary stats. We've kind of seen this before, and Blizzard has historically made this mistake in the past where they remove something that's a good idea, armor penetration springs to mind, and then suddenly it's replaced by a whole big lot of other bump of other nonsense, which then just cancels it out entirely, and we just have this whole flood of stuff. One of the big things that Warlords of Draenor is trying to address, in my opinion, is to not make mistakes which will just end up being a problem we need to fix later. Reforging is one of those things. They badly itemized everything pretty much in the Burning Crusade. The only way they could fix that at the time was to bring in reforging. Now we're getting to what the Mists of Pandaria, where everybody's just reforging, and now gear is such a pain in the ass to modify that people can't stick on a piece of gear when they get it. They have to leave it in their bags, which is never fun. You pick up a brand new weapon, the last thing you really want to be doing, or hopefully, for the sake of the transmoggers out there, it's not saying, hey, you know what, can I just abandon the raid for a bit because I need to go to town, I need to get this not only enchanted, I need to get it gemmed, I gotta go buy my shard gem, gotta go over there and pick that up, then I kind of gotta come back and then I gotta reforge that motherfucker, and then I gotta transmog it, and then I'll be able to use it. I'm gonna be gone for like 15-20 minutes. Nobody wants that. What Blizzard wants you to do is say, dude, I just got my brand new dagger, awesome, equip it, done. Right? Enchant on a scroll, gem in your bag, slap it on. You don't need to go fanny around with it and get it all reforged, otherwise your hit no longer works because all this stuff was balanced around every single item in your inventory. So they got rid of hit and expertise. Let's get rid of that. One of the big problems is my hit cap is so perfect because of add-ons like Reforge Lite, which you cannot blame anybody for installing, right? How can you blame an add-on that will automatically calculate your best reforge? Of course people are going to do that if the opportunity is there, but what happens now is you replace one item, suddenly your hit and expertise are out the fucking window, you start doing way less DPS with your brand new cool item. Garbage. Get rid of reforging. Forget it then. Let's get rid of it. We trust ourselves to itemize properly. So what about these secondary stats? Big worry for me is the secondary stats, because this could be the linchpin that fucking brings down the whole castle. It could bring down the whole fucking rig if this goes wrong. And they put in secondary stats, which we've got a multitude of brand new secondary stats. How are they going to interplay between us? They're telling us we're going back to basics. One set of gear will look, one set of items will automatically transfer to whatever your main spec is at the time. Okay. But then there's these secondary stats that we've got to look at, because they're here. They are here, and there's plenty of them. How are they going to interact? Are we going to have different sets of gear depending on bosses for progression? There's a whole can of worms possible here with these secondary stats, and they are my big worry right now that could bring down this house of cards, which is built on solid foundation blocks of basic classes with unique flavor. Let's not underestimate how much flavor each spec will have now. Not just a class. Everyone looks for a bit of flavor in the class. Shamans have got the totems. Fucking paladins are lighting up the place like a goddamn disco. The Death Knights are running around with ghouls and fucking shiny blue eyes. Now we're going to see real flavor amongst each individual spec, which is definitely the way you want to go. An Unholy DK should be vastly different to a Frost DK, because they both work in two different ways. They really work in different ways. It doesn't matter if they kind of play similar, because the flavor of the class is very, very different. We're looking at a bottle of Dr. Pepper and a bottle of Coke. They look the same, they work the same, but you taste them, they're very fucking different, right? That works. That's not the way hunters are right now in Mists of Pandaria. That big problem I brought up is they all play the same and they all feel the same. Real fucking boring. It's Coke and Coke Light or whatever. So This is my big problem right now. My fear is the secondary stats could really bog this down and just make it into a whole mess where gear is like suboptimal. But will we have a choice? Is Blizzard going to be that hard? Ask yourself that question, because I have. I've asked myself that question if Blizzard's just going to turn around and say, you know what? Fuck you. This is the gear that drops in this instance. I don't give a shit if it's not perfectly optimal, because you know what? It's not going to be perfectly optimal. This is like Diablo 3. Getting to the exact perfect gear combination is never going to happen. This is the gear we're making for you. That way we can still balance around what kind of gear you're going to have. We'll give you a couple of choices. I got that confirmed on Twitter. I got it confirmed on Twitter by the Blizz guys. There will be a couple of ideas, but in general, you're going to get what we're going to give you. You're not going to be reforging it. You're not going to be messing around with it too much. We're going to give you what you're going to get, and that's it. What we're not going to allow you to do is try and make every single piece of gear absolutely perfect. We're likely to see things like best in slot gear sets still mixed in with a couple of stats that maybe aren't ideal, but you know what? The bosses will probably take some advantage of that. The bosses will take some advantage of that. And again, this land of opportunity comes up is if Blizzard takes a hard line and says, we're so fucking sick and tired of the math guys coming out and saying to us, you know what, if you rework this and redo that, you can gain 0.1 DPS. And then the players, the lower down players especially, being really confused by that by saying, well, the other game must be a piece of shit. That classic problem always occurs when you can possibly get really perfect items, is that people either look at an item and say, oh, that's the best, or everything else compared to it is absolute dog shit. Which is never the case. Got to be a bit of a fucking frustration from Blizz to be in that situation. Will they go tough as balls and then say, you know what you're going to get is what you're going to get. Enjoy it or don't. We don't care, because this allows us to make the game better. Remember, the classic synergy I've used in the past is what players think they want isn't always what's best for them. What are we going to do about the lower end players? We don't know yet. Don't know yet. We're going to see normal get easier. Are we going to see 5-mans return to their TBC level where they're kind of for raiders, especially the heroics? Remember, those original 5-man heroics were not designed for the casual player base. They were designed for raiders. They gave you access to the tier after the first tier of raiding. That's what they were designed for. You could do them earlier, but they were designed with that kind of gear level in mind. Are we going to see a return to that, where raiding's actually much easier? One of the things I'm kind of interesting to see, and I've heard some rumors, which I'm going to throw around for you now and let you guys kind of ponder this as we come to a conclusion here, is that they're looking to make big scenario events. People have seen the kind of response we got from things like the Wrathgate, the attack on Undercity, all these big events which aren't that difficult. They use existing assets such as the Undercity. They fill it with mobs, not difficult to do, and make a little scenario. Much better idea in my opinion than LFR. Really excited to see if this pays off. Only heard murmurings and rumors that they're going to do this. Is this, instead of having just LFR being for raids, we're going to see things like LFR scenarios, relatively quick, giving you a decent reward, like one boss worth of reward, but we're going to take part in an event which is interesting. Doesn't suffer from the LFR problem of people having the option to just disappear all the time because that boss is dead. The other queues they got were for 2 bosses that were already killed. Therefore, they just leave and people end up stood around. Right now, LFR is the most inefficient way to play. It's not fun. Why not make some big scenarios? And when I heard that the idea is there may be 25-man scenarios, which are just big events, which are really easy to put together, boom, got me involved, got me interested, got my ideas rolling. I fucking love that stuff. Right now, really excited for Warlords of Draenor. How can you not be? Look at the kind of harsh lines they're taking here. We're going back to what worked in the past. It didn't need all the bump and all the flair and all the silly, fiddly nonsense thrown into every single class to make it interesting. All we need is the bare bones. Get the bare bones of a class so it feels like a class, it feels solid, it works because it's nice and easy to remake, and then give us complicated bosses, interesting gameplay, lots of good stuff to do with those materials, with those building blocks. Put a solid foundation down, let's build on it. I'm fucking so hyped, guys. I'm over the moon with Warlords of Draenor so far, and it's only the alpha notes. God, it's only the alpha notes, and we still haven't seen the really good stuff. We've seen some interesting glyphs come out. As we predicted, didn't we? We predicted last week we're going to get to see the new stuff, the stuff that's replacing it. We saw some glyphs have come out. The glyphs, really good. Some interesting choices there. The opportunity to actually change glyphs on a really regular basis. Something a lot of classes haven't bothered to do. Not looking to really fill out your glyph slots because they're empty. Oh, we argued, what, like 2-3 months back, is the glyph system even needed anymore with the new talent system? Now, we're looking at interesting little twists that can be modified on a fight-by-fight basis. I like that, man. I like it so much. Let me hear what you've got to think. This is my initial impressions of Warlords of Draenor, and so far, I'm fucking loving it. Absolutely loving it. See you later, guys. Bye.